Welcome once again to the BluePrint. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. I'll tell you why, because the Liberal censorship machine is on the move again to talk about the newest bill, C-63, and much, much more. We bring back the one and only Rachael Thomas, the Member of Parliament for Lethbridge, also the Heritage Critic. I like having you on the show, but I dislike the topic that we continue to have to talk about. This is the third in a series of pieces of legislation that the government is working on, that's censorship. Before we get to hang on, I want to congratulate you on your latest news. You're expecting your first child. Congratulations.
Thank you,
That
Jamie.
is awesome news. I can see you're extremely excited about that.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, now we have to talk about the censorship. So first we had C-11. So that controlled what people could see, watch, hear online. Then we had C-18. The latest one that in many communities, including mine, local news is basically non-existent because you can't actually find it on the internet. Now you have C-63. What is C-63?
Sure. I think that's a really important history to kind of walk folks through, is the fact that this isn't just a one-off. This is a part of a whole series of assault on freedom of speech that the current Liberal government has been undertaking over the course of years. Interestingly enough, I was recently speaking to a friend who lived in Canada and has since moved her family to the US, and they're living in Texas and enjoying a whole lot of freedom. And we were having a conversation, and I was just having a regular conversation about life in Canada. And the more I talked, the more alarming her facial expressions became. Because she just said, Rachael, things in Canada are unrecognizable to me. It's 10 years later, and it's not the country that I lived in prior. And what she was referring to, of course, was the hindrance that has been placed on us in terms of our freedom, whether that's freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of just making decisions, freedom of access to information, those sorts of things. So all that to say, certainly there seems to be an initiative by this government to be far-reaching into the lives of Canadians, and certainly wanting to control our lives to a greater extent. So with Bill C-63, what this government did is they put it out there as a bill that was meant to be something to protect children from online harm. I believe all Canadians will get behind that. That's a noble cause. It's the right thing to do. We should be protecting children. Certainly, we don't want them victimized. We don't want adults victimized or re-victimized. We want to make sure that those disgusting acts are kept off the internet, and that those protections are afforded to innocent individuals. That said, that is not what this bill does. So that was kind of the shield that the government was able to put out there in order to get away with it. But at the end of the day, there's so much more at play here. And so I think that's important to understand. So really, I'll boil it down to this. This bill, it creates a bureaucratic arm that consists of three entities that basically will receive complaints or concerns. So if, let's say a sexually explicit image was to be posted without an individual's consent, then they could go to this bureaucratic arm and they could submit their concern.
They get to submit a form.
Essentially, yes. So the government
There's one thing people love doing, it's filling out a government form.
Right? They love waiting in line.
They don't mind at all.
They love filling out the form. They
Lots
love
of
having
comments
to
on
make
that.
lots of phone calls.
Yeah, absolutely.
They love being put on hold.
Yes.
They love having to wait weeks or months on end before they finally get an answer.
Especially when you're victim of a potential crime.
Totally.
Nothing would be more satisfying than to wait in long lines and a queue somewhere.
So I think this is the point, is really there were no meaningful changes to the criminal code to help protect these individuals. That is not what this bill does. It just simply sets up this bureaucratic arm. On the other hand, however, where it does instigate change within the criminal code is with issues pertaining to freedom of speech.
Of course.
Right?
Of course. You can't have people speaking their minds.
Right.
Not under this Liberal government.
Right.
Yes.
And so that is the issue with this bill, is that the criminal code, I believe really should be used to protect those individuals who are being victimized.
Absolutely.
Who have images that are shared online that shouldn't be. Those individuals who had, child pornography produced of them. Of course, that should not be happening. That should be penalized to the greatest extent of the law. Individuals who are adults but victimized, of course, they should have a way of seeking justice, and it should be through the courts. These things should be reported to the police, they should be investigated, and ultimately criminal charges should be laid where there is guilt. That is the way the system should be set up. That is not at all what the Liberals are doing here. Instead, they've reserved the criminal code in Bill C-63, they've reserved the amendments to the criminal code for freedom of speech. So for example, they've come out with hate speech laws.
Oh, we all love that.
Right?
What is hate speech?
What is hate speech?
It's what the government hates.
What, exactly,
Yes,
and
exactly.
that's the problem. That is the problem, is that this definition of hate speech is left so subjective that it actually puts us in great danger. Because ultimately then, it's this shifting definition that is, entirely subjective in nature. And ultimately then, through Bill C-63, these hate speech crimes will be punishable with up to life in prison.
That's incredible.
It's crazy.
There are murderers being let out on bail. And if you criticize this government, potentially, you're going to be going away a lot longer.
So that's exactly
That's
it.
incredible.
That's exactly it, right? So you have an entire court system that is backed up, and literally letting individuals who have committed violent sexual crimes, they're being let go because they're just not, the cases aren't being seen in time. You have individuals who are committing murder and they're being let out on bail only to commit another murder.
Yep.
Meanwhile, this government is now focusing its time, attention, and resources on cracking down on hate speech, which is ill-defined. That's a problem.
It is, because once that train goes down that track, it's hard to stop it.
Yeah.
Because, in a world that I live in, if I were in charge, no one party, no one individual would have the power to censor somebody else's speech, right?
Yeah.
And I think that used to be, anyway, something we all agreed on. But what it is coming to now is the government under Trudeau believes that what you're watching might be bad because it might be calling out the government on some of the issues they're having. Local news, which is, in my opinion, is a lot more impartial. They're very well balanced. The local news agencies, they're being taken offline in many cases. And now we have the ultimate hammer, which is you watch what you say or you're going to jail. Maybe super producer Nick can throw the graphic up while we talk about it. So again, as you were saying, $50,000 in fines in some cases, life imprisonment. Like this is incredible.
Yeah, so I think exactly, and I think this is where there's these different parts to the bill, and this one is referring to one that would put, there's this hate speech penalty that would be created under the Human Rights Tribunal that could result in a fine of up to $50,000. And remember, this isn't through the court of law. This is a tribunal.
Yeah, right. Another thing, yes.
Which means that there's a lack of accountability there, and actually not a proper justice system followed. Meanwhile, then there's also these changes to the criminal code that I was referring to before, which would, for a hate crime, hate speech crime, would be, potentially up to life in prison. I should also mention one of the things that this bill does that I think, many Canadians are afraid of, or certainly causes alarm bells for many, is this. It actually creates the ability for an individual or a group to come forward with a concern or a complaint against another individual who is deemed likely to commit a hate crime.
Oh, there
likely,
we go. There was a movie about this. I believe it was Tom Cruise, Minority Report.
Minority Report.
Yeah, where they thought they could predict the crimes. You didn't actually do anything, but you're under arrest and going to jail anyway.
Absolutely.
This is incredible. So the thought that you might say something, right?
Yes.
So we'll just shut down any dissenting opinion, any dissent against us being the government, and punish those that are free-thinking individuals that might not agree.
I think we would hope we would hope that this provision would be used in the most responsible manner possible. But at the end of the day, does such a thing even exist? Is there a responsible manner when you're actually convicting someone of a crime that they didn't commit?
Right.
It was only deemed likely. I would argue not. right? That's
course.
totally contrary to our system of justice in this
Yep.
country. And so I think, Canadians are rightly concerned about that provision, for sure.
Well, even we even have I don't like using her as an example, but Margaret Atwood. We even have Margaret Atwood coming out
Yes.
and saying she's thinking the government has gone too far. They have gone too far.
So Margaret Atwood has raised some really good concerns with this. Her and I don't see eye to eye on most of our politics, but nevertheless, I think on this one, she raises a really good point. And her concerns are that this bill would actually allow for what she calls revenge accusations. So essentially, one individual or one group is offended with another, and so they bring forward these accusations, which Bill C-63 allows for people to do while preserving their anonymity. And so again, there's little accountability. So you really could just take revenge on an individual or a group quite readily with this bill. And so that's certainly concerning. The other thing that Margaret Atwood raises with regard to this bill is essentially this idea of going after people because of thought crimes, is the term that she uses. And so I think, again, that is something that we do have to take very seriously, that you would penalize people for thinking a certain way and then speaking freely what those thoughts are. To go down that road is incredibly dangerous. Just even putting the bill on notice, just even tabling the bill has a chilling effect on free speech in this country. I can only imagine the effect that it will have, should it be passed into law.
And you can imagine the fear that the government's trying to impose on people, right?
Yes.
You better not protest against us. We'll freeze your bank accounts. You better not say anything against us.
Right.
We will come after you. You're looking at fines. Don't even think this certain way because we're going to lock you down. And it just puts that fear. There are countries out there that do this already,
right.
and living there is not exactly ideal. When you have people risking their lives to get out, right? In a free society, the guns are pointed outwards. In a communist or socialist dictatorship, they're pointed inwards, right? Like, this is a very dangerous path to take.
100%. And I think, again, that's why really, if we wanted to do something noteworthy, if the government was really focused on the well-being of children, as they claim to be, then really what needs to happen is meaningful changes need to be made to the criminal code in order to make sure that things like deep fakes and the use of AI cannot be used against a child or an adult, for that matter, anyone, to victimize them in any way. Most recently, we have an example where a deep fake was created on Taylor Swift, and so basically she was an AI generated image, a nude was created, and it went viral within a matter of minutes. And of course, you can imagine just the damage to her as an individual, but also to her brand. And it took far too long for that image to actually be taken down. We should be looking for legislative solutions to issues like that in order to make sure that Canadians are rightly protected. This bill does not do that. No. And so that's why I'm really proud of our Conservative team and the concerted effort that's being put forward right now. Michelle Rumpel-Garner is one individual who is leading this initiative in order to come forward with a private member's bill that would propose an alternative. I think Canadians will be really pleased with what we put forward because it really will have teeth and make a meaningful difference.
And that's the real issue, right? The government, as you said right off the top, is giving C-63 this fluffy title that makes them that gives the impression they're actually fighting against something that I think we all agree on is protecting the victims.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this bill does nothing other than a bit of smoke and mirrors, but also takes us down a very dangerous path that I would think most Canadians would disagree with.
I think that's exactly it. I think freedom matters to Canadians. Certainly, they're not wanting undue harm to be caused to other individuals or to themselves, but they are also wanting their basic liberties to be kept intact. Bill C-63 is an assault on that.
Absolutely, and I think we talk about it so much, and I just wish that those on the other side that think this is a good idea realize that this train does not stop moving once it's left the station. And that's the most dangerous part of it.
Right.
No government, I don't care what the stripe, should be even moving in this direction. It is very scary because free speech is the fundamentals of our society, right? Popular speech doesn't need to be protected, but it's the other voices that I may disagree strongly. It may upset my sensibilities, my principles, but I think the ability to say it should still be there. At the same time, I can also tune them out, counter them. There are other measures if the government doesn't like the speech or things people are saying about them. But again, Trudeau will do anything to stay in power. We know that.
Well, and I think not only anything to stay in power, but of course, there seems to be this ideology that drives Mr. Trudeau and his cabinet. This ideology around more control, more government infringement, bigger bureaucracy. All of these things fit within their framework of governance. Meanwhile, Canadians are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, not only in terms of paycheck, of course, but also in terms of voice, in terms of being able to have that freedom to believe what they want to believe and to be able to express those opinions accordingly. I think we're in a really dangerous place as a country right now. I can only imagine where we'll be, should Bill C-63 pass.
Exactly. Well, we appreciate you fighting for the team here, fighting for Canadians. As you know, the guests get the last word. The floor is yours.
Well, Jimmy, I just want to thank you for having me on. And, I think more than anything, what I want Canadians to understand is absolutely we should be doing everything in our power to protect those individuals who are who have images, wrongly construed and put out there online, or have, the harmful effects of the internet. For sure, we should be looking to mitigate those. Sadly, this bill does not do what the Liberal government claims it does. And in fact, it actually goes after Canadians. It is a direct attack on their freedom of speech. And I think we should be doing everything within our ability, of course, as the official opposition, but I would even say Canadians as a whole, to exercise our voice and to be speaking up and out about this bill and the dangers that it holds. So I think, more than anything, I would encourage your audience to get involved and to have their voice known. And certainly be connecting to the Prime Minister and his office directly and tell him to stop.
I couldn't agree with you more. Rachael Thomas, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your time and talking about this very important issue. The Member of Parliament for Lethbridge, also the Shadow Minister for Heritage. I do enjoy having her on the show. The topic, again, the third in the censorship legislation fiasco that we have going on. Not such a great topic, but we do need your help as well. We need you to like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. I guarantee you're not hearing this message in the mainstream media. Don't forget, you can tell your friends to download this program on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. New content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.